Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever it is you're watching this. I'm delighted to be here with you. So, I'm Sinead. For those of you that don't know me, I'm a leadership career coach with Generation Women, and my passion is to get more women into decision making roles and also to stop them leaving when they hit perimenopause, because so many women decide to leave the workplace at that point. And before I introduce today's guest, I'm going to share with you that I am running a webinar on the 9th of December that you may well be interested in. So it's actually more of a workshop because I'm going to be putting you to work, and it's all about reflecting on the year that we've had. What have you done brilliantly? What has got in your way? And then how can we set up fantastic goals for the next year that take those things into account? And so it's all about setting great goals, ditching your saboteurs, getting rid of the stress, and focusing on how you can have an epic 2025. And I always think it's good to get a jump start on this stuff. So you're going into Christmas relaxed, or the festive season, the holiday season, relaxed and knowing I've got it all sorted. I don't need to panic. I can just get on with it. So I'll post a link for that in the comments after this recording. And in the meantime, we have the best in class, I think, with Louisa Clarke. So Louisa and I met through our through business coaches that we work with, and we hit it off like like who knows what. And my Siri's decided I'm talking to it, so just excuse me in case Siri butts in. So we hit it off and we got chatting about what each other did. And I thought, oh, I think I need a bit of that for my clients. So Louisa has actually been working with my Impactful Leader Mastermind clients now for probably the past 18 months, maybe even longer, and making a phenomenal impact. And why? Because she is the expert at tricky conversations, those icky, sticky situations that we all avoid. She is magnificent at helping you approach that with confidence, with ease, and with a mindset of how to get the best from the situation instead of getting all caught up in the stresses of it. And she does that with a bit of magic, I think, but an awful lot of training and expertise. And I loved reading your bio because what Louisa does is she supports values-led organisations, which I love already, organisations that are really hot on what it is they're about and what they're projecting, and heart-centered leaders to have difficult conversations more often, more ethically, and more effectively. And her tool bag of strategies and techniques is phenomenal. More than that, she does it with style, grace, and ease, which I love. and so she really helps you be curious, an active listener, and make the most of relationships, so you can shift from as a manager, as a leader, struggling, avoiding, finding things tricky, to actually being able to connect and work with people in the best possible way so that you all can get the best possible results. So welcome, Louisa. I'm so excited. All of the masterminders love you. I love your session.
Thank you.
So, you're having a busy day, and I really appreciate you making time to chat with us. So do you want to tell us a bit about how you became the queen of tricky conversations? What got you? What got you here?
What got me here? Well, it's funny, isn't it, when you look backwards and you kind of join the dots backwards, stuff sort of makes sense. But I would never, ever have known when I was starting out in my professional life that this is where I would have ended up. And I particularly would never have known that because I used to hate difficult conversations. I am now very well recovering and far into my recovery journey, but chronic people pleaser and confrontation avoider. And yeah, I would never have foreseen this was where I would end up. But I started out, I used to work with actors and broadcasters and presenters on kind of core communication skills for them in their particular professional settings. So that was much more about, how to reliably know that you can hold a room, how to have a particular impact with your audience or listener, all those kinds of things. But the psychology side of communication, the social science side of communication has always fascinated me, and that really hooked me in. And actually, it was in training in something called restorative practice, which I initially did, back in probably about 5 years ago now, that I really got hooked into this idea of difficult conversations. And I mean, the work that I do, I wouldn't even necessarily say it's conflict resolution, but that's often the title that businesses end up using for the work that I do, or even sometimes mediation. And it's not really those things, because it's about equipping people with the skills that should mean that you actually never get to that place in the first place. And it really aligns so much with what I believe in terms of quality of relationship. I'm a big believer, this is an Esther Perel quote, but that the quality of our life is dependent on the quality of our relationships. And of course, we spend a hell of a lot of our life at work. We don't choose those people who we are going to be around. My work is absolutely not about people feeling that they have to be best friends with the people that they work with, but it is about saying, do you know what? When we're not saying the stuff that needs saying, that is so costly in every way that we look. It's costly in terms of resource. From a business point of view, it's hugely impactful to the bottom line if you've got a workforce going around and nobody's actually saying the stuff that needs saying. But more so on a personal level for the individuals who are involved. It's costly in terms of our stress levels. It's costly in terms of our relationships outside of work, because we go home and we moan about these people and we whinge about them. And we never feel as though we can actually put the things that need saying into the space where, if it could get said there, change could actually happen. These are tools that we're not trained in. We're not taught how to have these skills. We generally see two models of having a difficult conversation: are like bullshit, aggressive, domineering, power over kind of style, which is not for me at all, and actually comes with a whole host of other problems, or a kind of backing down and prioritizing niceness and warmth between us, but never really, it's not a true and authentic warmth, because there's still a load of stuff there. I'm all about smashing that idea that it's a binary choice. I'm not here for it, and it's not true, but it might take us learning some new skills to be able to find that kind of happy medium and the balance of the two.
Oh, Louisa, there's so many things to love with that. But what you've really reminded me of is why we connected so deeply is because our values, our mission, our focus is so aligned. And it is that whole piece of not letting it get to that stage. Deal with it. I'm all about let's work with the inputs. When it's reached conflict and a breakdown, often it can be too hard to resolve. We have to be better at building the core relationships. So love that.
Totally that, exactly. And my work tends to fall into two kind of categories, really. Either I'm going in and doing the work after it's been too late because people didn't have these skills. And that is where it looks more like mediation or conflict resolution. It's a slightly different approach, but that is about starting to try and actually clear the decks and then rebuild a relationship and co-create with these people sort of working agreements for them moving forwards, for how we then try and prevent this from happening again in the future. But then there's a whole other branch of my work, which is the proactive skills. It's the right, well, how do we learn these skills? How are we equipping our managers with these skills? let's not fall into that trap of just assuming that as we promote people and they move higher up the ladder, that these skills magically appear for them. These are fundamental skills if you are ever going to be in a leadership position, to make sure that you've got them under your belt. So yeah, I do a bit of the two dependent, but you're absolutely right. It's so much easier and quicker to see that change if we're putting these in proactively than if we're going in after the fact and having to do some healing work first.
Yeah. And that's why I was like, I have to have this in my Impactful Leader Mastermind program, because that's the whole ethos of it. It's about greatness in leadership. It's about maximizing impact. And so that's about doing things the right way to build the best relationships. And I know that everyone has taken so much from it, which is why I wanted to then share you with the world, with my network, so that they can learn actually that this is the ideal way to approach leadership. And it's such a fundamental skill. And when you said about the cost to business and the cost to the individuals involved, again, we align on all of it. The psychology, that's my background as well.
Yes.
But one of the fundamentals of the mastermind program is about maximizing impact whilst minimizing stress.
Yes, love that.
So yeah, if you're not able to manage those relationships well, then yeah, we know that goes out of the window.
Totally.
So, and also I'm just thinking about you working with actors and broadcasters and that side of things, and how you talked about working with them on their ability to influence and have impact. And I'm guessing a lot of that really plays into this work.
Yeah, hugely, because as you will be well aware as well, Sinead, and as a lot of people are aware, the words that we're using are only one part of it, right? And actually quite a small part of it, or potentially quite a small part of it. If also our, body language, tone of voice, facial expression isn't congruent with that message, then the body language, tone of voice, facial expression will always win out in terms of the message that we're trying to deliver. And I suppose the shift in my work came because I used to work on that in quite a kind of building blocks, practical way. Like, okay, so then what is happening with your body language and how do we shift that? Whereas now I am much more about, well, what's going on for you internally? What's happening in terms of your thinking patterns? What's happening in terms of the dynamics between you and this other person, so that we can bring you back into congruence in your communication. And actually, so often, this is the root of passive aggression, is where people aren't in congruence and aren't saying the stuff. And it comes back to that thing of, it doesn't have to be a big blazing row, or it doesn't have to be a kind of domineering, bolshy approach to name something that's difficult. It takes vulnerability for sure. But part of why I love the using a lot of the tools from restorative practice, and the other big modality for me is something called transactional analysis. The reason I love these is they show us a way that is truly as kind as it is productive to have these conversations. It has to be, because of course, if you're raising something that is challenging and you do it in a way that isn't kind and is a bit inhumane, well, you're only setting yourself up for more problems further down the line, or more challenges to come. It's about breaking away from the idea that actually power over, it might achieve compliance for a while from some, but you're going to pay the price of that further down the line. How do we have these difficult conversations where actually both parties feel completely empowered at all times, and that power is shared? And in businesses, that becomes really interesting, because there's always a hierarchical structure. Hierarchy is important. It's going nowhere. We need that structure for where the responsibility really falls. But what this work does brilliantly, and what I feel very strongly about, is how are we cultivating truly horizontal channels of communication within a vertical structure. That's when you start to get real movement and shift, because ultimately it's human to human, it's adult to adult. There's shared, though not equal, responsibility very often within that space. And there is a way that we can go about having these conversations that honours all of that. And they are so much more productive and effective and less stressful as a result of it.
Yeah, and we are going to dig into that, but I'm just going to make people wait a couple more minutes for that because there was something else you said in your intro that I'm sure will have hit home with many people watching and listening. And I know it resonates with me as a reforming people pleaser. Is that, this is not something that you were comfortable with. That you did have that people pleaser in you. I do think it's something that's very trained in a lot of us, especially women.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, tell us about that.
Oh, totally. So, yes. And, let's de-shame that for a second as well. The fact that lots of us do have those pleasing tendencies, it's not our fault. We have been socialized, especially women, and conditioned to lean into those qualities that prove that we are, adaptable and easygoing, and that we're easy to get on with, and that we make sure other people's needs are met before our own. Right? This isn't our fault, so let's de-shame it. And also, probably those parts of us have turned up in the past as really solid defenses against experiencing other more difficult things. So they've served a really great purpose. But it's about starting to notice where those tendencies are no longer serving us, and where it's not that they're wrong or they're bad. It's about where are they no longer serving us, and where would we like to be doing something a little bit different. That's the point at which we want to start getting curious. And there's a quote by a psychologist whose work I really love. She says, resentment is a sign that you didn't set a boundary early enough, or essentially resentment is a sign that you haven't had a conversation that really needs having. And I remember I was quite far down my route of having realized I was a massive people pleaser and wanting to start doing something about it. I was quite far along that road when I first heard this quote. And I remember just being like, oh my God, mic drop moment. Oh my God. And realizing how much of my life I was spending in resentment, and realizing it's such a shift to then realize, and that's my responsibility to then do something about it. It's about us letting go of that feeling of, if only other people would change. And then this would all start to fall in for me into, if I'm feeling resentful about something, it's a cue that it's my responsibility to seek to have a conversation about this. And of course, for the people pleasers amongst us, one of the who probably will be living in resentment a lot of the time because they're placing other people's needs before their own. But one of the most important things we've then got to let go of is we don't get to set boundaries or have some of these difficult conversations and control the way that the person who's receiving this from us feels about it. We don't get to. And that can feel scary. That feels really difficult. But we've got to shift our focus a little bit away from, I'm only doing difficult conversations right when the other person smiles and nods, thank you so much for bringing this to me. And no problem. Away we go, right? That's not our aim. Right, that's some unicorn fantasy land, right? That doesn't exist in terms of boundary setting or difficult conversations. Instead, what our focus needs to become is, how do I trust that I can sit in and tolerate the difficult feelings that come up for me when I do inconvenience somebody else? How can I trust my integrity to know that whenever I raise difficult things, my intention is always going to be about better connection and a better quality relationship, and trust that sometimes saying the difficult thing, inconveniencing somebody else, which most boundaries that we set or most difficult conversations that we have are going to be about, how do I just develop that trust in myself that I'm all right, I'm safe to sit in that discomfort? And even if you need to name it. I'm a huge fan of name it if you need to. Yeah, I'm finding this really uncomfortable. This isn't usually me. I hate feeling like I'm inconveniencing somebody, and I know it's what's going to be best for our relationship. So I really want us to have this conversation.
I love that, Louisa. And this is again where our worlds really converge, because a lot of what I work with women on is that whole piece of how to step into the part of your brain, your thinking, your support system to do the good, the resourceful thing, the right thing, as opposed to the comfortable thing. But
So
being able to,
bringing in
I love, and if all else fails, a pet will help you, can't so, but it is that, I talk about the difference between being in sage brain and saboteur brain. And so when we're in people pleaser mode, you're in saboteur because your ultimate goal is harmony, not results, not a positive outcome.
Yes.
It's just let's keep things cool
Yes.
and smooth. But actually, that's probably doing neither of you any good. And so, yeah, it's about how can I, as you said, be okay with that this isn't going to be comfortable, but I know it's the best thing that we can do here, and we will move on and we will get to a good place again.
Totally. There's also something that's really it's also a way of really honoring the other person and the relationship that you've got. And Brene Brown does a lot around this stuff about, well, how do I actually find a way of raising what I need to raise with you so that I can get back to that feeling of being generous towards you? Because when we're feeling resentful towards people, we really don't feel generous towards them. And actually, it's a great thing for us to want to set that bar for ourselves and for them. It's a great way of honoring them and our working relationship to say, look, it really matters to me that we're on good terms and that we're kind of meeting each other and understanding each other. It matters to me that we're in a good place, and I'm feeling some stuff come up. So I'd really like to talk to you about it.
Yeah.
And it's that difference as well between let's prioritize being kind. Let's not hang on too much to the idea of being nice. There's something very different there.
Love that. Okay, so there was so many rabbit holes I could have gone down. We'll maybe come back to some of them. Good rabbit holes, important ones. So when you're working with people in an organization and you're helping them embrace this new way of thinking, new way of operating, and it is new, I would say, for 99% of people that you come across. Where do you start, and what's your process to help them shift from the aggressive or the submissive approach to actually meeting people as adults and having the conversation that needs to be had?
Yes. So it tends to look quite different, but there is a core like underlying foundation that I suppose I'm always working with when I first start working with people. And it's the fact that until I can help them to bring aspects of their own behavior, their own patterns of thinking, their own patterns of communicating into awareness, until they've become aware of what they're currently doing or the dynamics that are currently existing, or even what they're currently settling for and taking, but then taking away and feeling resentful about, until they start to become aware, we can't change anything. So, and again, it's a transaction analysis thing, but they talk a lot about, well, awareness is the thing that then creates spontaneity, and spontaneity being that capacity to discover that actually, again, we have a choice. And so often where people are stuck to begin with difficult conversations is they've lost sight of the fact that they have a choice. They are trapped in one particular way of doing things. And very often that way of doing things is avoidance. So yeah, we do a lot of work around awareness, and I'm a big fan of using models from social science or from psychology where I can, that just help people to really have a clear image and an understanding. But that first step, yeah, crucially, is about putting them in touch with their own patterns, bringing those into awareness, to then start to introduce them to some different strategies that would maybe allow them to make a different choice.
Brilliant. And that makes so much sense to me, because I remember back in my early days, obviously my degree's in psychology, but I've always been exploring different approaches. And I remember a statement that was made, a bit like your one about boundaries,
Mm.
where perception is projection. And
Mm.
I,
That's
I
good. That's good.
yeah, I really love that, and especially in this context, because if you're going into a conversation full of all your baggage and your narrative of what's been going on and all the rest of it, and it is all a story that's been created in your head, there may be a few facts in there, but it's very peppered with who knows what else that you've added to it. And then you go in projecting that onto the person. Of course, you're not going to get the outcome that you want. Yeah.
Exactly that, totally. And actually, that's something I do come across a lot. And essentially, and I mean, especially if I'm in doing the kind of work where people have had a major fallout and people aren't working together, and it's costing a business loads of money because, you know, somebody's gone off on sabbatical because they're refusing to work with somebody else, or somebody's had to move department, or there's even a big staff turnover, you know, whatever it might be. So often when I first go in, people are in that real fixed mindset, and often also have completely lost sight of their own agency, that they have choice. It's like, you know, they'll so often say, well, I'm just knocking my head up against a brick wall. There's absolutely nothing I can do. And a lot of those early stages are about me really challenging that mindset, because I am a believer that there is always choice that we can make. We always have agency. It might look different than we sort of think it might. We might have to kind of think outside the box a bit or come at this a different way. But of course, we always have choice, even if that choice is to step away from a situation, right? So yes, I do come across that a lot, and it, of course, it's a really good headspace. It's a very tempting headspace to head into. We get lured into it. It feels great to imagine that we haven't possibly got anything at all that we need to change about ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're just
I played no part in this conflict. It's all them.
all them. Totally, of course, that feels great. We
Yeah.
all do it at times, and of course, you can also hear in that how completely disempowering of yourself you're being, because you're essentially saying, I have no capacity to positively shift this conversation or this dynamic, and I'm handing all of that over to the other side. I need them to change for anything to get better. As soon as
I'm
we're in
going to pause you there, because I just think that is such a powerful mindset shift for people to recognize that if I'm placing all the blame on them, then I have no influence, no agency to make change. Whereas you both own it, and therefore you both have a capacity to change how things
yeah,
turn out. Yeah, I
totally.
love that.
Totally. It's sometimes about shifting out of that such simple binary right wrong thinking. That's a lot of what I'm pushing people to do as well. Like, how do we get out of blame and shame and judgment, which is not about not holding people accountable. I'm a big believer in accountability and setting expectations and honoring them. And even sometimes there are consequences. You know, if you look at a standard HR process in businesses, there have to be agreements about what is and isn't okay, and when those expectations are, those agreements are breached, that there probably are consequences. But that's a whole different approach than constantly thinking in this kind of black and white, right, wrong, judgment, blame, shame place. Yeah, it's not very productive.
And it does really fit with, like, you know, you talk a lot about beliefs and useful mindsets, of that mindset that, like, people don't come to work to do a bad job. People are doing the best they can with what they have. It's just, you know, what they have right now isn't fit for purpose.
Yes.
And that's both of your responsibilities to shift that. And
Totally.
particularly if you're the manager, the leader,
Yeah.
it's very much your responsibility to change that.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And we can only control ourselves.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm gonna come back to some tips for how to have that conversation. But I want to make sure that we talk about, obviously, one of the areas that I am very passionate about and I love to help women with is around menopause.
Yeah.
And so there are a whole host of potentially tricky conversations there. So maybe you're having to go and speak to your manager or somebody in the organization about the problems that you're having and asking for the support that you need. Or equally, you could be the manager, having to have a conversation. Like, if you thoughts or ideas or tips for people facing that and how they can more confidently go into those conversations?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing that comes to mind is, let's imagine that it is that you're maybe, working for an organization and discovering, because you are going through perimenopause or you're approaching the menopause, or, that you are struggling and you need to go and have a conversation. Even the thought of having that conversation, I'm so sorry about my cat. Even the thought of that conversation will stir a load of stuff up in you, right? It feels vulnerable. It feels personal. There's such a taboo. I mean, you're doing amazing work to smash that, Sinead, and the sooner the better. But, it's understandable why people feel resistant or nervous about taking that. And the first thing I would say is notice and validate how uncomfortable it does feel. Notice that for yourself and allow yourself to find it difficult. It sounds so strange and such a simple thing, but that little mindset shift of just pausing before you're going to go and have the conversation, pause and think, wow, I feel so vulnerable about doing this, or I feel really uncomfortable. I feel really nervous. Validate it. Of course I do. This is deeply personal. Menopause has had such a taboo around it. This is a professional setting. So many things that are way outside of my control, to do with our culture and society and the way that we've thought about this stuff, and the patriarchal nature of the society we've been in for so long. All of that's outside my control. And of course, it has an impact on how I feel. Like, it's okay. I'm allowed to find this difficult. Just pausing, even that little bit of self-talk will set you up to be far more likely to actually go through with the conversation in the first place, than if you don't pause to notice those feelings, or maybe even are kind of quashing them down in the first place and berating yourself for having them in the first place. It's the same psychologist I was talking about earlier, but she talks a lot about how confidence, we always associate confidence with feeling good while we're doing something, and it doesn't really serve us to think of that. And her reframe is that confidence actually is just the ability to be able to be at home with whatever we are feeling in our body at any one time. And that's how you root into your confidence then, before you go in for a conversation with your boss or with HR or whoever it is about this. Root into your own sense of self-confidence by noticing what's going on in your body and allowing it to be there. Let it be there. That's the first thing that I think. And the second thing is about letting ourselves off the hook about, it is never our responsibility to manage the other person's feelings when we say something difficult.
Oh, I've got chills. Yeah.
It never is. And around a difficult subject like this, like, let's imagine again that you're a woman going in to broach this, and the HR person you're seeing that day is a much younger man, right? Or whatever the setting is that is making this feel uncomfortable. And especially if you're a pleaser, you will get very in your head about, oh my God, they're going to find this so cringeworthy. I can't say this, or I can't do this. We really need to let ourselves off the hook and remind ourselves, hang on, these are different things, right? These are different things. What exists here, like behind this imaginary pane of glass, is my experience and my feeling, and his is going to exist on the other side, right? He's entitled to feel however he feels by me raising this. It's back to that point earlier. I don't get to raise this and control how he feels about it. I do get to control how I raise it. And then I do get to remind myself that however he experiences it, whatever his emotions are about it, are not my responsibility. I can meet them, I can empathize, I can validate, I can say, I can see this is really uncomfortable, or I understand this feels really awkward. Trust me, it does for me as well. Here's why it matters, and here's why I need to say it today.
Oh, beautiful, Louisa. And I just, the freedom of that, just being able to say, right, this is mine. This is
Yes.
yours, and I can only manage this piece. Yeah, absolutely. And at the end of the day, it's their job to deal with whatever.
Yes,
Um,
exactly. Absolutely. And oh my God, something that inherently, as a woman, you are going to experience and go through, like that is not something to be apologetic about,
yeah,
inconveniencing somebody else or
yeah,
triggering a possible emotional response to. Well, let's de-shame that. This is happening. It's happening to your body. You haven't chosen for it to happen, and you have very real needs that occur as a result of it. So my God, put down the additional emotional labor of being responsible for somebody else's feelings.
brilliant. And so then the person sitting in that seat,
Yes.
having the conversation, this is being brought to you. What tips can you give to them?
So I would say in some ways similar. So, whatever is coming up for you is valid and is okay. And it's your responsibility to manage it. Okay. So noticing that and be really holding that in awareness. And then I think really it's about curiosity. And it's about if you don't know the answers or you don't know what you can offer in terms of policy next, or it's something you haven't dealt with before and you are feeling uncomfortable about it. It's about it being okay to not know there and then, but to be curious about it and just empathize and validate. Empathize and validate first and foremost. We need to feel seen and heard way more than we need to be outright agreed with, is the truth. So, if nothing else, see and hear genuinely what is coming at you from the other side of the table. Validate it, be kind about it, and manage any of your own discomfort about it for yourself.
Oh, I knew this conversation was going to be full of gold, but I've just got so much love for you and your work,
Gosh,
Louisa.
May, thank you. That's all day.
So, but that, yeah, to be seen, to be heard, and yeah, and to be trusted, I think as well. You know,
Yes.
I think that's the thing. The big fear is for women, apart from the shame and the stigma and, the potential impact, is that I won't be trusted to get on and do what I need to do. So I may need accommodations. I may need to work from home sometimes. I may need a fan on my desk. I may need
Mhm.
flexibility.
Mhm.
Um, and it's often quite simple things that make the difference. I may need understanding, but I need to feel trusted that I can do what needs to be
Yeah.
done and I ask for help when I need it.
Mm. Yeah, gorgeous. And that is the other thing then that I would drop in for the person sitting on the other side of the desk who is in HR or who is the manager or whatever, and you've got an employee coming to you and being vulnerable enough to share that this is going on for them and to talk a bit about what they might need. Oh my God, no matter what your own thoughts are, believe them and validate it. It goes back to the mindset that you mentioned earlier, Sinead. It serves us so much better to fundamentally hold the belief that people are doing the best that they can with the resources that they have available to them at all times. Let's start from that position. That's not to say then that all accountability goes out of the window. Of course it doesn't. Of course we get to set expectations. Of course there will be business expectations that are non-negotiable. I'm not asking or suggesting that you throw all of those out of the window. I'm saying, okay, so here are the business needs. Let's talk about those and get those on the table. I really want to know about what your needs are now, given what you're saying to me. What matters to you? What do you need in this? Let's get both sets of needs on the table and then let's work out how we honour both of them to find a way forwards. That's
Love
what we
that.
want those meetings to be.
Yeah. And it really makes me think about how that person needs to be valued even more for coming and sharing this, because so much, like, not that we should devalue people that don't feel they can, I'm not saying that, but if
No.
somebody comes and shares that, there is a real willingness to make things work. They want to be
Absolutely.
able to do their job well. They are struggling right now. And so just to meet them with that
Yeah.
is, yeah,
Yeah, again,
absolutely.
in bringing that conversation, they are honouring their role and you
Yeah.
and the business by bringing it, because they want to get back to a place where they can feel generous towards the business and their work and the organisation. They want to honour it. And they're just saying, hey, I can't at the moment because these fundamental needs of mine are not being met. And I will take responsibility for the ones that I am purely responsible for. And I really believe as an employee that these are the ones that you're responsible for. And I really would like you to meet me with them so that I can go back to feeling as though I can give my all here within the boundaries of what is possible for me, and that is trusted and honoured. Yeah.
Oh, just fabulous, fabulous. Oh, and we could talk for about 2 days, I think, without a doubt. So I just want to make sure, um, if whatever the conversation is, whatever the tricky conversation is, we've talked a lot about that mindset and that ownership. And it did make me think of not quite so educated a quote as you've come up with from psychologists, but I do remember an episode of Working Moms
Wait.
where um, the husband says to the wife, nobody's coming to fix this. And I always think of that. Yeah, so we have to take ownership. If
We
it's
do.
our stuff, we have to take ownership of it. But we've talked a lot about that, the mindset, the meeting adult with adult. If there was a couple of things, maybe one or two things that you wanted people to take away from this conversation that can make their conversations richer, more connecting, more productive, what would that be?
So, yes. Oh my God, my head goes immediately in ADHD wildness. Right. I would say it is totally first and foremost about seeing where your responsibility comes in. Like, watch out for we all do it. I'm guilty of this as well. I will go into some really kind of passive victimy behaviors because I'm annoyed about a situation, and I'm denying somewhere on some level that I have a capacity to change it. And and that will start to become clear because I'll be a bit defensive, or I'll be a bit cool or a bit off with somebody, or I'll give a bit of a short and curt response, or I'll say, yes, sure, I can do that, making it very clear in my tone of voice, my body language, that I don't really want to be saying it right. Let's just really hold ourselves to account to notice where that's happening. Notice where we're going into some of that kind of slight passive aggression or those passive behaviors, and hold ourselves to account that we do have another choice here. Let's stop trying to imply through our behaviors and our short and curtness, I really need you to notice here that something's going on, and then I need you to do something about it. No, we're handing all of our power away. We are completely disempowering ourselves. Let's notice where we're doing that and take some responsibility and get curious, not through shaming ourselves for having done it, but through thinking, what could I do here that might affect a change that is actually more in alignment with what I need? What could I do? Because actually, it probably is my responsibility here to make a shift. So that's the first thing, because you do yourself such a favor by starting to notice that, and to start to advocate for yourself that bit sooner. So that's the first one. I think the other big thing that, and I'm kind of landing on this one because so often when I run workshops and work with people, this is the thing that they're like, oh, that was the big light bulb for me. You are not responsible for how other people feel. And you're not responsible for managing somebody else's strength of feeling because you have raised something difficult or set a boundary or stated something that you need. Just relieve yourself of that pressure. It doesn't, so many people worry that that makes them not a nice person, or that suddenly that they're no longer empathetic or something. It's just not true. We actually get to be way more empathetic when we can see and hear and validate somebody else's experience around, I get it, I understand this is rough, or I know that this is a lot, I understand. I get that you're a bit annoyed that I'm saying no. I get that that's, whatever. Like, let's validate and empathize. Fine. But that's so different from feeling like we've got to feel their feelings on their behalf and take it on. And as long as we're in that mindset, we are going to broach far, far fewer situations where actually a conversation would shift it positively for us. We're going to let so many of them fly. They're going to disappear, and that resentment's going to keep building up. So yeah, we are not responsible for the way somebody feels.
And that's the thing, you just harboring the problem until it becomes bigger and bigger. Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, wonderful. Well, Louisa, if people want to work with you, reach out and get your help, who do you help and where should they find you?
So I'm mainly on, I'm not brilliant on any of the old social channels, I've got to be honest, but you can find me on LinkedIn and you could message me there. My business is called Confidently There. So you could email me, louisa@confidentlythere.com. I work with all kinds of different people. I work with a lot of leaders who recognize that this is a skill set that they're not really yet on top of, they don't have under their belt, and they would like to be much more so. I work with any values-led business, and I say that because, to be honest, if the business isn't values-led, this work won't align for them anyway. But if they are, and you're interested in building a culture where more robust conversations can go on to streamline the way that people are working and to make people happier, and to significantly improve their well-being and reduce their stress levels, then I'm interested in having a conversation with you for sure.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
And of course, you play a vital role in the Impactful Leader Mastermind that I facilitate. And actually, I'm seeing, I know we've briefly discussed this before, but when we got offline, I think we definitely need to have a chat about some other work we could do to help shift things in the menopause.
Change the world?
Massively. Change the world. We're always in for changing the world. Oh, thank you, Louisa. You are fabulous. I'm sure anybody that watches this has taken so much from it. So thank you for sharing, and it's been such a pleasure and a joy to have you today.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me on, Sinead. I think your work is amazing. It's so important, and I'm thrilled to be able to support it in any way that I can. So yeah, thank you.